Okay, so today we are in conversation with Dr Glenn Laverack. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you.
Glenn, can you just tell us a little bit about your career, your background in health promotion?
I've been working in public health and health promotion now for 30 years,
Wow.
would you believe. Mostly in health promotion and internationally. I mean, I've worked in Africa for 5-6 years, Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Central Asia, the Pacific. I did my PhD, for example, in health promotion in the Fiji Islands. I've worked as an academic in Australia and in New Zealand. I've worked with indigenous people in Australia and in New Zealand and a little bit in Canada. So I've had quite a varied health promotion stroke public health background at different levels, as a practitioner, as an academic, as a researcher, but also working in the NGO sector, working in the private sector, working for the UN, for UNICEF and WHO. And I guess, I don't know, well, I guess that's given me a broad perspective on the profession.
And a global perspective as well.
A global perspective, yes.
Brilliant. Glenn, you see as one of the key thinkers in the discipline of health promotion, and there's a lot of debate about what health promotion is and what it isn't. Yeah. From your experience, how do you conceptualize health promotion?
Yeah, it's a good question because, as you know, health promotion means many different things to many different people, But to me, how I interpret health promotion still is really based on the Ottawa Charter, I think. I mean, I look back to that very brief interpretation of health promotion in the Ottawa Charter as a process of enabling people to increase control over and to improve their health. Mm-hmm. I'll get that wording just right, because I like that interpretation because it's quite flexible, it's not too rigid, and it emphasizes a couple of really important things about health promotion as an academic pursuit, but also as a practice. First of all, this word enabling. It emphasizes that we as practitioners and as researchers and as academics, we enable others, we facilitate, we mediate, the language of the Ottawa Charter really, to people to take control over their lives and their health. Now, back in 1986, when the Ottawa Charter was written, we didn't use the language of the determinants of health or the social determinants of health, but essentially that's what it's referring to. And to me, helping people to increase control over their lives, the determinants of their health or their health, is essentially talking about helping people to gain more power over. Control is essentially power. And the means to do that is through this process of empowerment. And that's why, to me, empowerment has always been central as a concept to health promotion, because although the word empowerment is not specifically used, I think implicitly that is what it's talking about. Given that the Ottawa Charter was written in '86 on the back of the 60s and the 70s, which is a really fertile period for social movements, for example. So for me, that's how I interpret health promotion.
And Glenn, what do you think in terms of a global view of health promotion? Do you think it exists? From your experience of working in the different continents, do you think that there is a unified view of health promotion? And does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, if there is a unified perspective on health promotion today, it comes from the UN, it comes from the World Health Organization, because the World Health Organization has been instrumental in setting benchmarks in health promotion through its statements and its charters. I mean, the Ottawa Charter, the Bangkok Charter, what came out of the Helsinki Conference, just to name three. These set milestones and benchmarks and help to define how we work within the profession. But from my own experience at the country level, there isn't a unified perspective. And you'll find that people may use the language of health promotion, as we do here in the West, but in practice what they're doing is still very much about health education, health communication. What's interesting is that in many countries people understand this. They understand that there is more to health promotion than just health education. And what they're trying to do is make a transition away from health education into a more broader policy-based health promotion approach. And I think this is where, and this, for example, came out of the Nairobi conference, the WHO Nairobi conference, very strongly from many African countries. And I think this is what we need in health promotion. This is where we need to be focusing. We should be helping countries to make this transition into a broader health promotion model. We have the frameworks there, you know, we have health in all policies, we have the Ottawa Charter for Practitioners, for example, just to name a few, but we need to help countries make this transition. I think that in order to have a more unified perspective.
Excellent. And you've mentioned, Glenn, about the Ottawa Charter now quite a little bit. A lot of critique about the Ottawa Charter, about whether it still has utility in kind of modern day health promotion. What's your views on the Ottawa Charter? Do you still see it as being pivotal to health promotion practice?
Not as it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago when it came out, it really was, you know, a milestone document. And of course, I think all of the people that were instrumental in writing the Ottawa Charter are still alive today, you know, and some of them are still working in health promotion. So I think it's really commendable that we are celebrating, and a number of different conferences are being held this year to celebrate 30 years of the Ottawa Charter. I think that's it's a proper thing to do, really. But we have to understand that the world and health promotion has moved on from 30 years ago, from the Ottawa Charter. You know, the Ottawa Charter was written for practitioners. It's a tool, basically, for practitioners. I've used it myself many times as a tool to help me structure health promotion programs. But it is in desperate need of a revision. You know, things such as reorientating health services, for example. People feel that this is one area that we need to revise. So I think, again, the profession needs to have the ability, the courage, if you like, to say now is the time to revise the Ottawa Charter. There's no reason why the Ottawa Charter shouldn't be as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. But in order for that to happen, it needs to be revised, to bring it up to date, and to use more modern language. And we have to ask ourselves, how could that be done? Because the Ottawa Charter is a charter of the World Health Organization, which was signed up by and agreed to by the member states of the World Health, the 192 or whatever member states of the World Health Organization. So I think this is possibly where there is a sticking point on how can that be achieved. If there is going to be revision, it can't be done by an individual conference, you know, regional conference, or even a national level conference. It has to be done through the right way, through the World Health Organization. I'm not sure if that is possible at the moment to do that. So
you've talked then about how health promotion has changed, and certainly I guess in your experience of 30 years working there within the field. What do you now see as the key challenges facing health promotion as a discipline?
I think as a discipline, technically, whether we look at health promotion academically or if we look at it as a practice, there is a dominance of non-communicable diseases, very much so. I mean, this is not surprising, given that a lot of health promotion is delivered through government. Government agendas are around broad epidemiological issues, and therefore non-communicable diseases is today a key issue, you know, a health issue. So, but you know, health promotion has so much more to offer in, for example, communicable diseases. It's an area that we very rarely see health promotion spoken about, and yet health promotion has a very strong role to play in that field. I think, you know, health promotion really needs to move forward, and another challenge is globally is how it can align itself with development agendas. So personally, I feel that health promotion missed the opportunity with the social determinants of health. We didn't engage with the social determinants of health when we had the opportunity 5 years ago or so. Now we have a new opportunity with the Sustainable Development Goals. This will be the new development agenda for the next decade or so. What is the role of health promotion in this? There's just been a big conference in Shanghai with the World Health Organization to look at the role of health promotion in the SDGs. Unfortunately, that conference is very poorly represented by civil society organizations and also by technical academic people. So we'll have to wait to see what comes out of that conference from a political and a sort of policy-making level. But I think that is also another challenge. And I think the third challenge for health promotion is professional inertia. I really don't see us as a profession being as dynamic as we could be and addressing, you know, these issues. I mean, you know, we do tend to we tend to work with what we feel comfortable with. So, for example, health literacy has become a big issue in health promotion. It's been heavily criticised by many people for just being old ideas in a new sort of packaging. We need to be, I think we have the potential as a profession, we certainly have the capacity to think broader than this. So we need to be more dynamic as a profession, I think. That's a challenge.
And you've asked in some of your writing, some of your publications about potentially the lack of global health promotion leaders. And where do you see the next 30 years going in terms of leadership for health promotion?
Well, I think we need to look at that from an individual perspective, because there'll be champions of health promotion who will be working at government level and working in different agencies, UN and bilateral agencies. But we also need to look at that institutionally. And I think institutionally, at the moment, it's the World Health Organization, it's the International Union of Health Promotion and Education that have a global perspective. One is UN-based, member states, the other is by a professional subscription. But I don't see either of them in a strong position at the moment. There are strong academic centres of excellence, such as here in Leeds, for health promotion, but I don't see them individually creating the future leadership for health promotion. So I think what we need is an alliance. I think we should be talking about an alliance for health promotion for the next 10 or 20 years with civil society organizations, with academia, with agencies such as the UN or bilateral agencies. And we should be looking at how that should be structured, and we should be looking at how that should be funded. And we should really be looking at what that will look like in another 15 or 20 years. I think, to me, that is the future. And out of that will come individuals. I'm talking, really about mid-career people. We should be identifying mid-career people now, like yourself, James, who are coming through, in their 30s, coming through and are going to be carrying forward in the next 20 or 30 years. We need to be identifying these people and, to be honest, giving them opportunities to speak, at conferences, giving them opportunities to do editorials in key journals. This is what we need at the moment in terms of leadership, I think.
And I guess the politics of health have changed, and the politics more generally has changed, Glenn. And we're now, I guess, in a very neoliberal time in the West, libertarian ideas. And what implications does that have for health promotion? So the move towards individualism, if you like. How does that?
Well, I think libertarian politics is all well and good. As you say, it's stronger now in the West, and we've seen it very recently in the United States and in the UK in terms of people having a stronger voice, and in governments not necessarily listening to individuals, but having to respond to individuals. I think libertarian, focusing on the individual, giving individuals more autonomy is a good thing if governments, if politicians are willing to create a supportive environment. If we shouldn't be focusing on the individual, because I think we've been through that in health promotion and public health, and we know where that takes us down the road of victim blaming. Because it focuses on an individual's circumstances and doesn't take into account the broader social-political, the broader social determinants of health. And we know how important these are for people in their lives in terms of influencing their health and their well-being. So, if politicians are going to be giving more responsibility and more autonomy to individuals in a libertarian way, they also need to be thinking about how they can strengthen civil society. Whose role is this? Traditionally, that's not being a government role. So who will strengthen civil society organizations? And in many countries I've worked in, civil society organizations are very weak, have very poor capacity, are under-resourced. And unless there is a strong civil society base, then we can't expect, libertarian politics to work in that way. It will just be individually focused. And I think, governments need to also be thinking in the same way of creating not just a supportive but an enabling environment. So giving people the opportunity, more of an opportunity to practice, the messages that we put out about better health.